So Sara Blakely was born in Florida in the early 70s. Her dad was a lawyer and her mom was an artist. Now, most parents encourage their kids to succeed, right? But get this, the really cool thing her father did was he'd encourage Sara to fail. They'd sit at the dinner table, having a family meal, and the dad would look at Sara and ask her, "So what did you fail at this week?" And if she had a good story, he'd give her a high five and encourage her. That seems a little bit weird, but there was a good reason he did this. It was this little reverse psychology trick because Sara would get excited to have a good story. So instead of being afraid to try things, she'd be excited to try something new, even if it meant failing at it. Another important childhood moment is that Sara's dad had these Wayne Dyer self-development tapes. They were called How to Be a No-Limit Person. And that was the only thing she'd listen to while driving. It got so bad that her friends refused to get in Sara's car because they got sick of listening to those tapes. But that audio helped Sara convince herself that achieving an amazing life was possible. And they gave her the confidence that she could actually do it. Early on in her life, she had a few entrepreneurial ideas. While she was a teenager, she set up this haunted house for Halloween and charged the neighbors' kids for admission. She also started a babysitting club by the beach at the local Hilton Hotel. She made money watching kids while the moms and dads went tanning. This was kind of a sketchy business because she was just out of high school, had no experience, no insurance, and she didn't even have any CPR training. Thank goodness there were no freaky accidents while she babysat those kids. Now, to top it all off, she set this whole thing up without getting permission from anyone at the Hilton. Holy cannoli! She went totally rogue on this one. And the crazy thing is that she got away with it for 3 whole summers. Here's how she got busted. She had this idea about how she could increase revenue for her underground babysitting club. So she went to pitch the Hilton general manager. And he was like, "Wait, what? You've been doing this illegitimate babysitting thing for 3 years without management knowing about it?" So that venture got shut down real quick. The manager literally escorted her off the premises and told her to never come back. Ouch! Sara went on to get a degree at Florida State. Her plan was to become a lawyer like her dad. This was a childhood goal for her, and it was the career that she dreamed of her whole life. And it wasn't one of these pipe dream careers either. She actually took a bunch of classes and joined the debate team so she could have a solid foundation for a future law career. But then, she took the LSAT exam to get into law school and scored terribly on it. She didn't just fail it once, she failed it 2 times. She was crushed. And since she still had to get a job somewhere, she applied to wear a Disney character costume at Disney World. Let's take a moment to appreciate how rough that was. When your dream of becoming a lawyer comes crumbling down and your next best option is wearing a chunky costume. Wearing that outfit, having to take zillions of pictures with screaming kids, and sweating buckets in that Florida heat. But it gets worse. She was 2 inches too short for the goofy character costume, so she couldn't even get that job. Instead, she spent 8 hours a day buckling people into their seats on roller coasters. And this is close to where she grew up, so every so often she'd run into former classmates and they'd be like, "Sara, is that you? Didn't you go to college?" You gotta have a healthy ego to go through something like that. That's the type of experience that either makes you strong or crushes you into pulp. After 3 months of misery at Disney, She applied for the sales job that was advertised on a billboard. Then she spent the next 7 years selling fax machines door to door. And by the way, for my younger listeners, fax machines were these big, bulky machines that people used for sending documents before email took over. That was an intense sales job. They basically gave her a cubicle, a phone book, and then said, "Okay, now go sell $20,000 worth of fax machines per month." This meant that she would cold call businesses and go to people's offices unannounced and try to sell them these fax machines. She got kicked out of offices all the time, and some people were so mean that they ripped up her business card right in front of her face. That's painful. Now, I've had my share of terrible jobs, and this one sounds like it was brutal. But even with all the adversity, she did so well in that company that she became the national sales trainer at age 25. Usually, being in your mid-20s is an age where most people are getting settled into the career they want to have long-term. And here she was doing the soul-crushing sales job. But in her heart, she wanted to make a difference, and she knew that she was meant to do something bigger. So after a particularly rough week of prospects yelling at her, she did some brainstorming. She sat down and wrote in her journal that she's going to invent a product and she'll make millions of people feel good when they buy it. Now, I don't want to get too new agey here, but she was very intentional about this, basically asking the universe to bring the idea to her. I know it sounds very kooky, but it actually worked. Here's what happened. One night she was getting ready for a party and she wanted to wear these white pants. This is a problem that guys aren't really aware of, but for women, the issue with white pants is that they can show your underwear. So Sara had the genius idea of putting on body-shaping tights under her white pants. This solved the problem of the underwear showing through, but she also wanted to wear sandals with the pants, and you can't really wear sandals with tights. It's a fashion no-no. So what she did was she cut the feet off the tights so that she could wear sandals with the tights and the white pants. At that moment, the light bulb went off. This was something that didn't exist in the market, and it was a solution for a problem that lots of women had. The idea was to make body-shaping tights with no feet, so women could wear these tights under their white pants or skirts. Not only would these tights shape their body, but they'd also eliminate any sort of underwear lines. Amazing idea! So next up, she had to find a manufacturer to make her product. At this time, Sara was living in Georgia, and as luck would have it, there were a bunch of hosiery manufacturers in North Carolina, which is about a 6-hour drive. Calling these manufacturers wasn't working. People were hanging up on her and not taking her seriously, so she took a week off work and went to North Carolina to visit the mills door to door. That's a crazy level of determination right there. She faced tons of rejection because these manufacturers are used to dealing with established firms. Sara was just one person with an idea and only $5,000 to work with. After a whole week of her trying so hard to get a deal, all she heard was no. She came home empty-handed, but then she got a surprise phone call from one of the mill owners. This guy changed his mind and said he'd give her a shot. Sara was shocked. She just had to ask him why he changed his mind, and the guy said, "Listen lady, I have 3 daughters, and when I told them about your idea, they convinced me to give you a chance." Okay, so she had a manufacturer. Next came the prototype. It took Sara a solid year to get the prototype ready. This whole time she was working at her 9-to-5 sales job during the day, and at night and on weekends she was working on the prototype for her product. That's when she noticed that throughout the whole manufacturing and prototyping process, she was only dealing with men. It was strange, because all these men were making products that women would wear, and that's when Sara was like, oh, the reason that pantyhose has been so friggin' uncomfortable for 40 years is because the people wearing them are not the ones making them. These bozo manufacturers would put the same size waistband on every pair of pantyhose. Every size tights from medium to extra large would get the same size waistband. And if you do that, of course the garment is going to feel loose for a small person, and it's going to squeeze the heck out of a bigger person. Okay, so the companies doing this were not stupid. They did this to save costs during production. But from a customer satisfaction perspective, this made no sense. That was the first change that Sara made. She made different size waistbands for different size garments. So simple, but that alone made her product so much better than anything else out there. The other thing Sara learned was that the mills didn't actually have real people trying on the products to figure out sizing. Instead, they'd make a garment and put it on this plastic mannequin and stand back with their clipboard and go, "Well, bub, looks like a medium." There wasn't a real person trying on the garment to let them know if it fit too tight or too loose. Sara changed all that, and her prototypes were worn by real women of different sizes. It seems like a small thing, but it made her products so much more comfortable than the competition. And the whole time she's doing all this legwork, she didn't tell anyone about her idea. She did it for a full year without telling a single person. Here's the reason. Ideas are very vulnerable when they're starting out. And so sometimes you can share an idea with someone who's gonna trash it and tell you, "That's never gonna work." It's so easy to get discouraged when the idea is just starting out. So she held off until there was more momentum built up. Next, she had to get the patent done. She only had $5,000 to spend on the whole business, and most patent lawyers would charge $3,000 to $5,000. Most people would probably call it quits at this point, or blow their whole business budget on the patent. But instead, what did Sara do? She bought this book about how to write your own patent. And then she spent long nights at the library researching every single hosiery-related patent ever filed. And after doing all her research, she drafted her own paperwork. Then she went to a lawyer that was nicest to her and asked if he'd sign off on the patent claims. When the lawyer saw the amount of research that Sara did, his jaw dropped. He couldn't believe it. And that's how she got the patent done for the amazing low price of only $750. She was working super hard to make sure every dollar she spent was stretched as far as it could go. Very clever. Now at the time, all the packaging for the other tights and pantyhose was gray, white, or black. The existing packaging was so boring and it hasn't changed in like 40 years. Sara decided to shake things up. She chose a bright cherry red package and she put cartoon women on the cover. She didn't have any money to advertise, so she knew that the packaging had to stand out and it had to scream, "I'm new, I'm different, check me out." Alright, Sara was off and running, but she still needed a name. She knew that Kodak and Coca-Cola were the two most recognized brand names in the world, so she started thinking, what do they have in common? They both had a strong K sound in them, and she learned that the guy who created Kodak liked the K sound so much that he put it at the beginning and at the end of the company's name. And then there's also this little known trade secret in stand-up comedy that the K sound makes a punchline funnier. So all of this stuff is going through Sara's mind while she's driving, and then she literally saw the word Spanx come across her dashboard. She pulled over to the side of the road and wrote it down on a piece of paper. Now she had a name. Things were really coming together. She had a patent, production, and packaging, but now she needed to get some sales going. She wanted to get a retail store to start actually selling Spanx product at scale. So Sara called the buyer at Neiman Marcus. This was a cold call. Sara didn't know the buyer at all. Her pitch was, I invented a product that your customers would not want to live without, and if I could have just 10 minutes of your time, I'll fly all the way to Dallas to see you. To her surprise, the buyer agreed. So they met, and this buyer woman is very professional and all buttoned up. Neiman Marcus is so high-end, right? So the buyer's pen matched her belt, matched her shoes. Well, halfway through the pitch, she realized that she was losing the buyer. So Sara threw a Hail Mary to save the sale. Sara asked her, would you please come into the bathroom with me? The buyer was like, what? And Sara told her, I want to show you the before and after of how Spanx works. So they went in the bathroom, and the demo impressed the buyer instantly. Right away, she was like, oh, I get it. This product's amazing. That sealed the deal, and Sara got her start in 7 of their stores. Now, when this happened, Sara didn't just say, okay, my product is in all these stores and now I can just relax. She would go to all these stores and set up training sessions to help the sales associates sell Spanx. She would give away product for free and have these motivational sales meetings to pump everybody up. She'd also stay in the stores for hours, meeting customers and introducing them to the product. This was such a genius move. She was building up brand ambassadors that were not on her payroll. So she didn't have the expense of paying their salaries, but she did benefit from all those sales they made for her. She was having so much success with Neiman's that the other big retailers like Nordstrom and Bloomingdale's signed deals with her as well. She was also doing this little sneaky tactic where she would call all her friends and she'd ask them to go to Neiman's and buy Spanx. And she'd also ask her friends to make a huge fuss over how amazing the product was. And then afterwards, Sara would send them a check to reimburse them for the purchase. She did this to make a big buzz around Spanx and to create some momentum. Retail associates at Neiman's saw people coming in to buy Spanx, and they saw customers making a huge deal about how amazing the product was. That would make them want to pitch Spanx to other customers because they believed that the product worked and that customers loved it. Sara's best marketing move was sending some Spanx to Andre, who was Oprah Winfrey's stylist. Andre put a pair of Spanx in Oprah's dressing room. Oprah tried them on and loved the product. Oprah loved Spanx so much that she named it one of her favorite products of the year in a special episode. And Oprah only endorsed products that she actually liked and used, so this was amazing advertising. Sara finally resigned from her fax machine job about 2 weeks before the Oprah show aired. That was after a full 2 years of grinding it out and working on Spanx at nights and on weekends while maintaining a full-time sales job. When that episode aired, Spanx got such a massive boost in sales that they sold around 50,000 pairs in 3 months. Back then, Spanx were selling for around $20. So she would have sold a ballpark of $1 million in the 3 months after launching her product. And assuming a conservative 10% margin, Sara would have personally made around $100,000 profit from the sales in those 3 months after paying all her expenses. But to keep the business growing, she just kept reinvesting all her money right back into the business. Since then, they've launched more products and kept up this huge momentum. Sara has also been super smart about how she invested the company's money to make it grow at just the right speed. She knew which product lines to launch because of all the time she spent at retail stores talking to customers. 7 years after founding Spanx, they had $150 million in yearly sales, and they've kept up that amazing trajectory. Now, one of the most incredible things about Spanx is that by 2021, Sara still owned 100% of the company and she never took on any outside investments. So this huge investment management firm called Blackstone bought a big stake in Spanx in 2021. After 20 years of Spanx success, Sara's net worth was estimated at $1.3 billion. Even after the deal closed, Sara still had a huge stake in the company and stayed in a senior leadership role. And to celebrate the transaction, Sara gave each one of her 750 employees $10,000 in cash, and she also paid for 2 first-class plane tickets to any destination in the world. Talk about sharing the wealth, that is so cool.